Hello, and welcome to this session on with cloud native, never build your application, just continuously integrate. Myself, Kamesh, I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a second. And I hope, oh, sorry, I need to share the other screen. So share my screen, and there you go. I hope you see my screen right now, the presentation. Um, just to get started again. So myself, Kamesh, I work as a director for developer advocacy at Harness, and a long-term open source contributor, contributing to open source for quite some time, and a Google developer expert for cloud as well. If you have any questions on this session, I know we have a very short time. I'll try to condense within that short time. In case, if you have to reach out to me on any questions on this session, I'll be happy to answer your questions. My Twitter handle, LinkedIn, and GitHub are there right below. Please do scan it and then keep chatting. You can send a DM or anything. I'm happy to answer your question, right? Fantastic. So in case anytime you lose my screen or something, probably I could just have to reshare it due to technical issues. I'll do that. Excuse me about an instance. Right. Awesome. So so what's next? So what are we going to talk about? So we are going to talk about developers, right? So I'll just start with a little story, right? Once upon a time kind of thing, right? So I am a Java developer for quite long. So I love doing Java applications. I want to go and deploy applications. Me and my team have been working for that for quite some time, a week or so. And then we want to deploy our application into production. So this is a story way back, just rewinding back some time behind. And when you have to do this, so we work all the week long. And then right at the weekend, right around let's say on Friday or something, we just go send our application to our DevOps guy, ops guy, say, hey, can you get this into production? Right. So we just write a document, or we just write a what do you call a piece of instructions, a script or something, and give it to him and deploy it. And then we say goodbye, like, let's catch you on Monday, right? When I come back on Monday, I still see my application is not deployed. A very simple reason, as you see on my slide, is that my application is using a WAR file. Let's say I want to deploy, but I tested on Windows 7, JDK 8, and Wildfly 9. With the data source being MySQL. But unfortunately, my production environment is on RHEL 7, JDK 8, and WebSphere 9 and Oracle Database 12. It's total upside down of what I've been testing my application on. And this, in fact, causes you what we call as a wall of confusion, right? And then we start the blaming game between dev and op. Okay. I'm sorry, Diego. I think, let me see. Let me share again. This is a problem again with the. So do you see it now? Oh my God, what's happening? Let me do a reshare again. Okay, and then stop share, and then share my screen. And I hope you should see my screen now. Let me do a new share, and you should see it now. Yeah, that's great. You see it now? Awesome. For some reason, like Zoom has kind of stopped sharing. I'm sorry about that. If I have to go back, let me go back a few slides earlier, and then let's do it from here, right? So, all right. So let me city my scene. Okay, all right. I'll also have to get my notes on. Perfectly fine. Okay. Let me do one more little reshare of my presentation. I'm sorry about that. There are multiple things running on my screen right now, so usual technical glitches of your presentation, right? Alrighty, so okay, and go back to the Zoom and share again. I hope this comes up pretty well now. All right, you see it, Diego? Okay. Sorry. People, like it was a small glitch at my side. I was sharing a different screen and it was not coming up. All right. So what we're talking about is I'm just going to run through the previous slides, right? So we just started with a Java guy or Java application developer technically going and deploying his application into production, right? And then when you come back on a production day, the application is not in production. So for a very simple reason, as you see on my screen, is because that I'm using a desktop with Windows 7, JDK, and Wildfly 9, but my production is actually in RHEL 7, JDK 8, and WebSphere 9. This is an usual scenario which I've seen, like as me as a developer, as I grew as a developer, I always had these problems. Like, and then we start with this technical, I don't want to call this a blame game, but it's a blame game that, okay, we say, okay, ops guy doesn't know what to deploy. He deployed something blame, and then the ops guy come back and say, you don't know what to do. And this kinds of what I call as a wall of confusion started, right? But luckily, what happened when Docker introduced containers, right, and the containers was introduced into developers world, things were made much easy because all I have to do is like I have to package my application as a container, which has a guest OS. For example, in my case, like it's going to be a Java app server, custom configuration, dependencies, and even a RHEL server packed as a container. It could be there a Fedora or whatever we want. And then we just ship the package to the ops guy and say, okay, can you just go deploy it? And that's how we started with what I call as a container native, right? And this was kind of try to solve many problems. And even many companies, after the advent of cloud, they started to move their applications from the local thing, right? For example, on the local laptops into the cloud just by containering it, right? And what I call this as a lift and shift kind of an approach. So it is not technically a real container-based thing. What we did is like we just kind of made this application and package that as a container, and then lifted and shifted that into the cloud and deploy, because as most of the clouds started to support the container-based environment, right? And this made things easier for people because it solved many of these problems. Technically, the wall of confusion was solved because there is no longer an issue between these two people, because always what is getting shipped is a container. So anything that goes wrong is technically the developer has to go back and fix things on the container. But you know what? This kind of thing did not last long. So for simple reason, right? Because when I ship monolithic application, which is a fat, big monolithic applications into the cloud, the developers started to say, okay, this is getting too hard for a container. The container is getting a lot of tight coupling, a resource crunch. I need a lot of memory. I need a lot of other stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. So I have to basically package everything in the containers becoming solid. So let me break down into monolith into microservices, right? And then the problem right now, what happens when I kind of run this microservice, it starts to give me a lot of an operational complexity, right? Because when I run a container, as you see on my screen, each container needs to have a Docker build, Docker push, and a Docker run, right? And there needs to be a registry which needs to control all the stuff from where everything needs to run across multiple different places. So this kind of put a burden on your maintenance, because like I have to run so many Docker runs and Docker pushes, right? It kind of having some issue on that. And then you also don't have a way by which I can orchestrate these applications together so that they can talk together as well. So this kind of start to give more and more complexity, though it solved an issue, what we saw earlier in my previous slides. But the problem right now is that it's given this to what is called as an operational complexity. And even in fact, at times it becomes hard for us to go and roll back the changes, right? It's become hard. In short, if I have to put this has made your release cycle complex and hard to manage. And this is one of the reasons why Kubernetes was introduced. Kubernetes kind of partially solved this problem. The problem that you're talking about earlier was partially solved because Kubernetes was able to orchestrate your applications. I don't need to do manual Docker run and Docker kind of build and push kind of thing. But still, one of the important things that I need to run is like, how do I build my application? So how do I roll out a new application into production? So how do I manage those things, right? Which is technically your release cycle, right? I build my application, I build it, I push it into registry, and then Kubernetes take it up from the registry and Kubernetes deploys it. But sadly, what's happening is that I don't have a way by which to control this. And this is what a problem that's raised to Kubernetes, right? And we were searching for something which would solve this problem. Technically, there was a principle which was already there for quite a long time, but we did not use it effectively for cloud, right? And that principle is what I'm going to talk about a little bit more in this session, is on continuous integration, right? So with continuous integration, what we are going to do is that, so we're going to take, when somebody commits and pushes the code into your Git repository for that matter, so it's going to be container engine or continuous integration engine that's going to kind of take that particular source code, build it and push it into the registry. The moment it is there in the registry, it's going to be easy for Kubernetes to kind of pull it out from the registry and start running it. But bear it in mind. So what we need here is that we're talking about everything around container native, right? Everything, something built for containers, right? Something doesn't work around, right? Because we thought that lift and shift had problems, right? Because which means that the older continuous integration tools were not ready for the cloud era. Because we do the same thing, ship the application, package it as a container, and deploy it, but it's going to have its own problems when it starts to run in a cloud-based environment. So we were searching for something which should be container native and which understands the container cloud native paradigms. So that's easy for us to kind of get this continuous integration working in a cloud without any hassles. And that's where we're going to talk about drone. Drone by harness is one of the things that gives you a container native pipeline, which means that it's going to use containers, as you're going to see in my demos and some examples that I'm going to share soon. It's going to use containers and then kind of containers as steps, as sequential steps, start to build your application and use that particular stuff to deploy your application or push the application to registry. Right? Just a little intro about this. I'm going to skip this one because for your offline read, when you get the slides, probably you have to see. We'll just go see what is a container native pipeline means to us. So as I was saying about container native pipeline in drone's world is just a small YAML file, which is called as drone YAML. I should say small. It's not small. Sometimes it can even get bigger depending upon your use case. So what does it pipeline looks like? It's just a small YAML as you see on my screen. I have a kind called as pipeline. It's going to be type. There are various runners. What is defined by type? In this case, I'm going to use a Docker runner, which is going to run with your Docker for desktop, which is going, and then you can just run with that. And then I'm going to give a name. Usually default is the name of the thing. We can have any number of stages. We can define that later. Those are advanced drone concepts I'm not going to touch today. And if you see a step, I just have one simple step here. I'm just going to, it's called as test, which uses a Golang image, which is any public image can be used. And the commands that's going to be used here is go build and go test, right? These are two commands. All the things which is going to be listed on the commands are going to be a sequential steps that get executed as a shell script inside that particular container. And that's all is required here, right? So that's all my application is going to do just to build my application here. So we'll see an example of the same thing with the Java application when I show you a demo. But right now, this is what your drone pipeline looks like. And how does it translate into a set of series of Docker commands, right? If you see, if you went previous slides, right, we saw about Docker build, Docker push, and all these stuff, right? And Docker run eventually. So this is exactly the same thing that's getting converted here. So your workspace or source code is going to be mounted as a volume inside your Docker container. And then I'm going to do a couple of Docker runs, which is going to run this application and build and package it, obviously, and deploy it. And this is going to be very effective if you're going to have a heterogeneous team. For example, a team that builds a Go code, and then a team that tests something, and then there's a team that's going to be take care of database, and there's going to be lastly somebody who is going to push this application into cloud, right? So when you see if this kind of an application, this kind of heterogeneous team, in the previous cases, there were a lot of dependencies, there's a lot of installation that I have to do on my machine to make all these things run. But eventually with the cloud native world, all these are going to become super simple with the container native pipelines, is that all these people are going to give you a simple pipeline, an image that I'm going to use, and my pipeline is going to reuse that images from the respective teams, which makes it super easy that I don't need to rely on any kind of tools that needs to be installed on my machine, and gone the days where I say it works only on machine kind of thing, right? It's now going to work anywhere you want. All right. So that sounds good. And then and even to go to the next extent as well, right? We can also make or combine multiple steps together. For example, GCS copy, GCS build kind of thing, and then make these things together and kind of say, okay, hey, this looks good to me, and can I make it as a reusable one? Obviously, can do that as you see on my screen. Just reuse it, package this application, and deploy this application. All right. And this one is going to be shared in a shared registry within a company, and many of your team can start using this particular application, this particular image for their needs, just passing some commands that they require to do. And that's exactly what we call as drone plugins. Drone plugins is basically nothing but a pre-packaged image, which has predefined set of steps that's going to be used. And then those going to be reside in your package within your registry. And then I'm going to take it out and then kind of go and build this application, right? So I'll also show you a link where you can see there is a lot of plugins that is available out of the box. You can just go use those plugins for your case, right? As I said here, plugins are nothing but Docker containers with a pre-packaged logic. That's as simple as that. All right. So here is an example of how do we do plugins here. So this is going to be plugins / Docker, which is already there. When this is going to build a Docker image for you from your application, and then there's going to be a plugin Slack, so which is going to use send an image to Slack once your build is done. And there are other plugins as well. Let's go and see once I share my browser later. I'll also take you to the plugins.drone.io where we can have lots of other plugins that's going to be used. All right. I think I made a lot of talk. Let me shift to my terminal. I just need to quickly stop sharing and start sharing again on a terminal. Let me go back and then go to my terminal and then share a different screen. And I hope this time my screen comes up correctly. And then I need Diego's help. Diego, do you see my screen? Again, I'm going to see a new share. Let me see if I shared the right screen, right? So do you see my terminal on my browser? I'm going to go plugins.drone.io. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm just doing a quick verification to see if everything comes up. I'm sorry about the screen. All right. So plugins.drone.io. So that's where I was talking to you about. And if you go here, for example, I just published a Java plugin for Maven here. So you can use this plugin, and that's what I'm going to use in my demo as well. So this plugin allows you to kind of build your Maven projects. Java projects using Maven as well. So this is again plugin. There are a lot of other plugins that is available. Please do go and search. You don't need to write everything from scratch. There are a bunch of plugins which is available here. You can go see there. There's a bunch here for AWS, and then you can also go search for something for Google. And then you have a lot of things for Google here. So which you have a bunch of plugins for Google as well. So start using, you can just start reusing these plugins just like I shown in my slide. It's going to be pretty easy, all right? So what you're going to see today, I'm just going to jump into a demo, considering that I have a few minutes left. So this is what, if you see my screen, I've opened up a simple application. This is a Quarkus application running a simple greeter service. So what this greeter service is going to do is basically it's going to greet you with a set of messages that is there from my application properties. That's going to be in hello world, and we'll change that thing later. And then that's going to go to Google translation service and then kind of translate the message and send to a Kafka queue. And then it keeps polling and then keeps seeing on the screen. So this is what this application is going to do. I put these application sources in the resources link. You can see that later once you get the slides. But this is what the whole application is. It's going to be a Quarkus application and using Kafka behind the scenes, using Google Translate service to talk to translate and translate the message. All right. So that's what it's going to do. So let's go and see how does my pipeline looks. We saw all these things earlier. Since I'm running on a Mac Silicon, I just need to use ARM64. Otherwise, you have to use AMD 64, right? And then I'm going to say which branch I want the thing to be done. So I'm just going to say, okay, run it on my demo branch that I'm going to show right now. And then it's going to clone the sources here. I just going to do a manual source cloning just to give you an example. Otherwise, it automatically sources the clone. I'm making sure I'm using Nexus behind the scenes for all my Maven artifacts. So I'm just making sure my Nexus is available. So I'm just going to just doing a curl and say Nexus is available or not. And then do a Java build. As I said, using my Maven plugin here, I'm using a Maven mirror review all which points to my Nexus. And then I'm just going to skip test and then do clean install. All right. And then as a part of the first thing, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to publish this image as well. So just what you're going to see here. I'm just going to uncomment a few things right now, just for the demo sake. I'm just going to say, okay, uncomment build it again. Okay, and then I'm going to deploy that on Kubernetes. That's what the next thing we are going to see. I'm going to deploy this on Kubernetes. All right, that's all. Right. So if you see here, this is again an official plugin. I'm just going to see here and then build the latest plugin and then passing something like registry user where you need to push, the registry where you want to push, and the destination image. So these are going to be a bunch of secrets which you can add. I'll show you the console in a second. And then finally, I'm just using my utility kind of do a deployment, run a bunch of kubectl commands to kind of create and deploy my application. All right. So this is what is all my pipeline looks like. Okay. There's 4 steps right now. The first step is basically clone the sources, ensuring Nexus is available, doing a Java build, and then publishing the image into the registry and deploying into Kubernetes, pulling the image from the registry. And that's all it's going to do for now. And as you see, all these are publicly available images. And you can even have it from your local private registry as well. Doesn't matter. So in this case, I'm using all publicly available stuff. Okay. Let me go to my command line and then say git commit -m trigger build and then .drone.yaml. And then I say git push drone demo. Just going to push it. And then when I go back to my thing, so this is the console, what I was talking to you about. While the build happens, I can run you through the console. You see all the steps that we talked about or something which is getting executed here. We have to make sure the next is available, and there's going to be Java build that's going to happen and all this stuff. So it's going to be pretty fast this time because I have already cached it considering the time we have. And then it's going to deploy and publish the image is what is going to publish the image into the registry. So wait for that to happen. And how do we get all these components? I'll come back to this again in a second, but I've been using Argo CD behind, and I have all these components set up with Argo CD on my Kubernetes cluster, which makes things easier for us because I have to have multiple things getting updated. And the runner that is going to use is Docker runner. As you see, if you remember, I told you that I'm using a Docker runner. That's what's getting used. I have Nexus 3 deployed, which is also going to act as a registry, a container registry in my case, just for this example. And this is what I'm going to use. An image updater is what you're going to see in the next demo. That's going to be the last part of this for this particular session, where I'm going to use GitOps to deploy the same application. And let's go and see what happens here. The application got published. It's going to be there. And let's getting pushed. And then we should see the application getting deployed into the thing. Let me make my screen a little bit parallel to it. Let me open my terminal as well and then watch for what's happening here. Let me go here. Let's see. Okay. Let me see if my deploy things gets. I need to have a Kafka instance deployed, and there are a bunch of things that gets deployed here, right? Give it some time for this to pull. Hopefully the internet is fast, so that things gets pulled faster here, right? So this is the first part of the thing, right? Let's go to the next one. I'm going to go to my slides again. Let me see if I can open my slides again from here. So while this pull and deploy things happen, it's kind of going and doing this stuff here. It's going to install Kafka, and then it's going to install the application, and then we should have the application up and running here. So, well, good. This is pretty fast for us, luckily. I have my greeter running here. So let me wait for the greeter to be up and running. Maybe like it's just waiting for Kafka to be created. So let's wait for that, okay? And then while that happens, I can also open my thing from my history. I'll go to my slides. Let's go here, bit.ly. Let me take the thing, drag on. Okay, it does. So that's my slide. I think this is again the public link which I deployed earlier. So this is where you see the slides here. Okay, we can just see the slides from here as well, right? This is what we saw. Let me jump to the place where we saw about this, right? So just going to, all right, we were right here on my place where I say demo here. Okay, so let's see if everything is running. That's great. So let's go port forward. Demo apps. I think I'm not in demo apps. I'm just going to go to my apps because demo apps is something which I'm going to do next. Okay, it's getting forwarded. Let's go to my local host and then say 88T. And I should start seeing the hello world soon. I'm getting translated. So let's get some time for that to come up. I hope things are running well. Okay. It's getting stuck. Okay, let me see if my pods, status of my pods is good. Yeah, there we go. It takes a bit of time for it to go to Kafka, and then it gets translated all this stuff from the various different things, right? For example, it gives you multiple different languages just to say hello, right? So this is what we had here, right? On my screen here. So I just say hello, and then if you go to my application properties, it says hello here, right? So this is fine. But if you see for a second, right, what I have been doing is quite intensive, right? For example, if I say I have to do a build, I have to do a write, and then if you see in my drone YAML, I have lots of steps that basically builds and deploys application. You see, it's just like another script, right? So let's see, this is not the optimal way because in cloud native world, the job of CI is to just build and push the application into your registry. The job of CI is not to deploy the applications because technically when you're deploying applications cloud distributed environment, we have different environments, different clouds, different Kubernetes distributions, and this becomes super, super hard when we're kind of going forward, right? So what should we do in this case? So that's what we're going to see next. I'm just going to make my screen bigger. Let me pull this into a bigger one. If you still see my screen, and then and that's what we're going to see. So that's what, these are the shortcomings as you already saw. I'm going to skip the slides considering this time we have. So you can see that the shortcomings mainly is that, as I said, we have a lot of things to cover. We have to change scripts. We have to change a lot of things to do. So what we basically do right now is go and say, okay, we have a version continuous deployment, which is nothing but GitOps. As I said earlier, I was using Argo CD for GitOps. So what this means that we stop scripting and start shipping, okay? So I'm going to stop this here and then maybe allow you to go to the slides when you get it. Let's get into the demo as the last part and see what I mean here, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is just go back to my IDE and then go to my GitOps thing. And then what I'm going to do right now is just say, I'm just going to comment this up and okay, I'm just going to comment this one and then say, okay, prepare for GitOps. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. And then I'm just going to say git commit and push. Git commit. I say prepare for GitOps. And git push demo. Okay. So meanwhile, while this happens, what I'm also going to do is like, I just going to go to my GitOps repository. I have a bunch of things to do here. So I need to create the substitution of YAML. Okay. And then what I need to do is like, I need to create a thing, right? I'm just going to do an empty commit right now. Git commit dash hello empty. Okay. Or is it okay? I'm sorry. Hello empty. And then I say GitOps run. Okay. This should be good. I'm not going to push this now. Okay. And I say git push GitOps main. It's going to push it there. So if you go to my Git repository, I should have my GitOps thing should have the GitOps run ready for me. There should already be in a build that is running here, preparing for GitOps. I'm all ready for GitOps. And the last thing I'm going to do is just create this application here. And the application should be created. And you see the lingua greeter is getting created here. Let me go and clean up the old one. Delete ns my apps. Save some space in my thing. And you should see the applications coming up here in a second. So there's going to be Kafka that's getting deployed in a different namespace called as Kafka. And that's going to be the Glitter application, which I have right now, is getting deployed. But right now, I'm using GitOps principles. I'm not using a manual clean and deploy. If you remember, my drone YAML has all the other components, Kate as deploy has been commented here, as you see here. I no longer use this here. I just use everything from here. So if I do the same port forward from here, so let me go back and do one little thing. Just do K port forward. Instead of my apps, I just give demo apps. And you should start seeing the same thing here. So, and then obviously this is the first one that comes there. And then you should start to see the translated messages comes up here. Like while that comes, what you'll also go and do is, let's say I want to say goodbye, or just say thank you for attending my session. And then I say git commit. I say thank you. And this is going to be the last thing I'm going to show you. Okay. I say src main resources. Okay. And git push git drone demo. And that's going to trigger another build for us behind the scene. Okay, let me say localhost 8080. And then that's going to go back and start building this one, right? As you see here. So let me see if things come out. I think that's a problem. KDO. Okay, get pods, FNN, demo apps. Okay, Git is running here. Okay, port forward. And that's it. And yeah, I can get ready for the questions while the build happens behind the scenes. I'm good for the questions. And while the build happens, so it says hello world still now, and then let's see the build happens here. While that runs on the screen, I can watch for questions. Okay, let me see. I don't think so. I have any questions for now. So we're done with the build here, and then the image gets pushed here, and we should see the application should give us something soon. So let's wait for that. And if that happens, yeah, there you see the new pod getting deployed here for us. And obviously my pod here should also get a disconnect here, right? Because my new replica set is going there, and soon I should see this one getting disconnected because new pods comes up, and that should say a thank you message instead of a hello world message that we are seeing right now, right? So let's wait for that and then see what happens. So let's wait for Argo CD to say, I'm ready. So once it's ready, it's going to go over, right? And there we go, it becomes healthy. Yeah, there we go, we got disconnected. I'm going to rerun the port forward again. And then let me go back to my thing and say what happened. And we should see a thank you message soon, okay? So let's wait for, I think that's what, you see, it's in an Indian language, Kannada, like we say, Dhanyavad and then Nandri in Tamil. That's what we see here. And the message got changed. And I did not do anything other than just commit the code and push it. This is as good as we call the Java world, right? We're just running java-jar and everything comes up for you. All right. So I think that's pretty much I have. Let me see if I can share the slides, obviously, share the bit.ly link as well. And let's go here, bit.ly, right? Okay. And that's all I have. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get you to the last slide. So where I'm going to have a bunch of resources left over for you. You can go over and watch the resources as well. I'm just going to skip slides, keep moving to the last, and we saw the demo. And there we got a bunch of resources for you left over here. So you can go over the resources, hop onto our Slack. We are there on the Slack. We can ask the questions there, right? So yes, the CI app is running on Kubernetes. Yes, exactly. So to show that question, I can also even show you that. So this is basically running using Argo CD. If you see here, the drone is a CI thing here, so which is running on Kubernetes here using Argo CD. So just to make sure, just to answer, make your things clear, I'm just going to say, okay, get pods -n drone. That's the namespace. And you see the Docker runner, which basically runs the build for you, and drone, which is a server that is running right now, which you're seeing the dashboard here as drone. I think that's pretty much I have. In case you love my session, please do tweet. Obviously, like the session, come back to me on the questions. Let me throw my social handles again. Just going back, rewinding my slides, just to make sure I share my social handles again so that we can reach out to me for any questions you have. So these are my social handles, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, and my GitHub. If you have any questions on this session or anything related to drone, CI, Argo CD, and everything, I'm happy to answer your question. And thank you so much for hopping on to my session. It was great talking at J4K, probably for the first time here, and looking forward to the future sessions. And thank you very much.